we're going to evaluate the country's democracy, good governance, human rights, and the way forward as a nation. In the studio to discuss with us this morning, we have Reverend Gbanie. He's the Director of Communications at National Commission for Democracy. Good morning and welcome.
Good morning and thanks for hosting.
And we also have Alphonso Gbanie, who is the Executive Secretary, Human Rights Defenders Network, Sierra Leone. Good morning and welcome.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
I'd like to start off with you, Reverend. We've heard you over a couple of times now, and every time we come here, we look back at how far we've come as a nation, what are some of the progress steps we've taken, and of course, any other way we've been faltering behind. So I'd still start off with that this morning as we talk about our state of democracy in Sierra Leone. Please bring us up to speed. It's a new year. How did Sierra Leone end last year, 2024? What were some of the points we took down that we have to improve on as we are here now in 2025?
Very interesting question and several things to talk about. But let's take our time to unravel the issues, probably one at a time. Sierra Leone's democracy is actually a work in progress. Even for nations that have started practicing democracy for donkey years, they are still struggling or grappling with one issue or the other. And not the least, Sierra Leone is not an exception to that. But we can confidently say that we are not where we were yesterday. We're looking at even our constitutional history in terms of where we started and where we are now. So many things have changed. There was a time when we even gave a try to a one-party democracy. That was the 1978 constitution that we had in this country. And several things had happened. But now we speak about a multi-party constitution, which is the 1991 constitution, and it has several provisions to ensure that the elements of democratization are evident in the country in terms of the institutions, the legal framework, the right kind of civic culture. All of these are things that we see evidence of in the country. And of course, there are definitely challenges, but we can say for now, on the basis of that Sierra Leone's democracy is something that is work in progress, and we continue to look at the various institutions and the roles that they play in the democratization of the country. We want to say there is still room for improvement. Looking at the landscape, our democratic landscape from the just concluded here, the issues, of course, are many, and it's a mixed bag. Some good, some bad, some even ugly. But of course, it's work in progress, and everybody has a role to play in ensuring that we fine-tune our democracy and get the best, even in terms of what you call democratic dividend. Those are things that we must not joke with, and we know that even if we look at it from the perspective of democratic security, where we look at the peace, issues of human rights and economic development, we know that even as you can point to say, yes, we see some semblance of people benefiting from human rights, we also see areas where such rights are either abused or violated. And in terms of peace, we also see at times when it's almost like everything is getting to a breaking point. But you see us recovering and coming back. And there's a word that is always used about Sierra Leoneans, that we are resilient people. Even when we get to the brink, as if everything is going to collapse, you will see us bouncing back and as if nothing had happened. But you have issues here and there that can be contentious. And when you go to the aspect of economic development, you know that even though we continue to make the right strides, but we still have room for improvement. And to put that in perspective, probably in our local language, we'll say the bread and butter issues. There are still things that we are grappling with. But all of it, in the context of our democracy, it's work in progress. And we cannot do it, or we cannot make it, without the contribution of Sierra Leoneans and all of the other players, even external players, who can ensure that our democratization process is very successful.
You mentioned the Constitution a few times, which actually established some of these institutions, and of course they derive their power from the Constitution. But does it still serve present-day Sierra Leone?
Well, if several players or actors that you deal with, they will tell you that it's obsolete, and there are so many things that we need to change now. We've been on the review process for a very long time. The institution that I work for, interestingly, we have the responsibility to raise awareness on the Constitution. We also have the responsibility to educate and educate the public to defend the Constitution against all forms of abuse and violation. We also have this serious responsibility to ensure that we realize the objectives of this Constitution. So whenever questions are asked in relation to the Constitution, we are concerned as an institution. And we are also adding our voice to the plethora of voices that have been calling for the enactment of a new Constitution. We know the process is cumbersome, but there are so many things that we have done, gains that we cannot allow to go to waste. If you look at the efforts of Peter Tucker under the Tijan Kaba regime, you also look at the efforts of the late Justice Kawan under the Anesbai Kroma regime. There are so many things that we have now which can suffice to help us get a brand new Constitution that will address the changing needs and circumstances of the country. In other words, meeting the democratic needs of Sierra Leoneans.
Alphonso, what progress have we made with regards recognition of human rights and protection as well in Sierra Leone? Do we deserve a pat on the back at this moment?
Well, if I can follow a little bit the trend of Reverend Jibril Kagu, I would say I will just borrow his words, like it's still work in progress. We know for sure that the current government has done a lot of work on promulgating progressive laws to protect human rights, to promote and protect human rights, and particularly the vulnerable groups like women, children, and the disabled. But there is still more to be done. And if you look what Reverend was trying to analyze, this issue of our democratic process from the layman point of view, or like the primary school days of democracy, when people used to talk about government of the people, for the people, and by the people. But if you go look at the element in democracy, what we have as a nation, what we have successfully, done in a more, even though there are challenges, is the successful conduct of elections and the transfer of power without hindrance. But that's not democracy in totality. There are also elements in supporting that aspect of democracy, whether you vote or you vote, they vote you in or they vote you out. But the other elements, which talks about rule of law, justice and accountability, participation, inclusion, all these things. These are the areas where we have some challenges. And I think that's the area where we need to do more, to step up. And I will say without reservation or with all due respect to other political parties, but I will single out the ruling SLPP and the opposition APC party. These are the two political parties that have been managing the governance system of this country. So if we want to analyze democracy in its context, we have to bring together these two political parties in how they manage their governance system. And we have, since the past elections, I keep hearing, and up to yesterday, even when leaving McKinney, coming to Freetown, people are still there jubilating that Madabio is going to transfer power to Samora Kamara, because politicians are there misleading their membership, not providing the accurate information. And so it is not only the conduct of elections, but how do we communicate to our members, to our electorate, to those that are supporting us with misguided information that will also undermine the security or the development of society. And so that is where we also have the challenge. Where we look at the government in terms of they trying to do their work in ensuring that people's rights are respected and protected, the opposition also has a responsibility to ensure that they come out with alternative means for people to say, look, the ruling party is not doing much, we have this alternative means, but let the alternative means don't come with misleading and misguided information that will undermine the security of the state and the peace of the country. And I think those are the two critical challenges we are facing in this country as we speak.
One would argue that there's been this state of political monotony in Sierra Leone. Only the two parties, as you mentioned, are steering the ship of state, which leads to excessive, abuse of power and all of these things, particularly, the broader political landscape. Do you think political monotony is also a problem we're faced with? It's part of the problem.
Thank you. You have used the word, it's part of the problem. It's not the problem, it's part of the problem. And I think that we also take one word from Reverend, this word, because, and it's not only coming from him, but it's even coming from politicians and even the current president, former president, whatsoever, that Sierra Leoneans, we are a resilient nation. It is not because of resilience. People have decided to say, let's just move on, because they believe that they have no alternative, they can't do anything to change the status quo. And so they are resilient, they are resolved to fate that, in quote, Alphonso, Lord left unto God. And that is where the politicians are banking that the country is a resilient nation. It is because people don't have the ability or the power to say enough is enough. And if you, sometimes people talk about the issue of Kenya. It is not because the conflict in Kenya or the protests in Kenya graduated to riotous conduct or violence. But it was because even the ruling party in Kenya, members of the ruling party were aggrieved. They say enough is enough. And that's the difference in Sierra Leone. Members of the ruling party, if you go to the market now, let me just single out the issue of rice. A bag of rice is almost 1,000 leones. If people want to demonstrate against this current government about the cost of rice or bag, people from the south and the east, where you have the SLPP dominated area, where they call us their own area or their strongholds, people will say it's our party, regardless of the pain they suffer. So we are not looking at the country as a nation. We are not nationalistic. We are more giving a patriotism to our parties rather than the country. And that's the difference that happened in Kenya as against Sierra Leone. And so that is why each time you have something like demonstration, even let me give you a reference, like the August 8, 9, and 10 incident. You realize that it occurred mainly from the opposition angle, because the ruling party, where you have supporters, they also feel a pinch, but they say, how for do it is our party.
Reverend, Alphonso is talking about general hypocrisy and, sentimentalism, if you like. To what extent does these two deficiencies have affected, or stained the fabric of, democracy in Sierra Leone?
Interestingly, I've written severally on that aspect about the hypocrisy of us Sierra Leoneans in addressing national concerns. We experience the bitterness, the pain, and everything. We cry about it privately. But when it comes to building consensus on those issues, we now begin to look at particulars, the region that I'm coming from, those that I'm affiliated to. And when, in fact, those very people that you're supporting, they are responsible for the woes, the crisis that you're experiencing, but you will still support, now we own them. And we cannot change with that kind of attitude. You go to a public place and somebody is behaving in a manner that is arbitrary, when you raise your voice to question such arbitrariness, you have others of your kind that will tell you, oh, bro, don't make like sense, he's a bit pastor man. But meanwhile, we are all victims of the same situation. You are always standing up to say, let's change this situation. There is a clip that I watched recently, very interesting. A law professor went to the law class, and his very first lesson, call it an introductory lesson, and he looked around and saw a particular lady and said, you leave the class, leave. And the lady said, well, what for? He said, just leave. If you ask any, don't ask me any question, just leave. And the lady left. None of our colleagues said anything in the class. And the professor now said to them, what is the essence of this law that you've come to study? They gave several answers, and one of them mentioned the word justice. I said, fine. He said, my conduct or behavior towards your colleague, was it one that was just? And they were even hesitant to answer. But eventually the professor himself said, I was not fair to your colleague. Why didn't you protest? It is because of this attitude of saying, well, let's manage the situation. I am not the victim for now. Why do you have to wait until you become the victim before you raise your voice? We must give voice to those things that we know will help us to succeed democratically. And for most of the time, it relates to human rights issues, where somebody's right has been abused or violated, because there's a distinction between the two. Duty bearers, like state officials, they violate. And so myself and you, we abuse each other's rights. We see such situations, but it becomes so difficult based on this our attitude, partisan favoritism, my friend, the old boy network thing. I must not go against this other person. I had an interesting experience where I was even threatened by a policeman. Why was I threatened? To ask the question, what evidence do you have that those that you arrested in such a place, they were actually involved in the alleged offense that you said was committed? What is your evidence? And the officer went ballistic. Who am I to ask him that question? And prior to that, I had stated to him, one of those arrested reported that he was tortured. And he said to me, he who asserts must prove. I said, fine. That was what led to my own question. And he went ballistic. He was angry that I'll be beaten up and thrown into police. And I said, for what for? Is that the kind of policing that we must encourage in our country? And you have other people who will say, okay, calm down, let's leave him, let's leave him. The boys are in police cells. Let's appeal for their release. But it's a matter where the law is the law. An offense that is bailable, somebody will go and get the person bailed from police cell, and if the police needs that person, the person will report with him. The police officer was not ready to listen to any of that. What you've done is to question his authority. You want to let him know that you know the law more than he does. And there is nobody in this life who knows everything, that he does not have somebody who knows more than he knows. Even as I'm speaking, all that I'm saying, you have thousands of Sierra Leoneans who know better. How can I now abrogate to myself to say if somebody questions me, then I should become angry, when it should be a civilized talk for us to now change the situation? But that is what is happening all over the place. And it's a situation that we need to pay attention to so that we can improve on the gains that we've made in our democracy. No doubt, if anybody says to you that we've not made gains in our democracy, that is far from the truth. But it's still work in progress, and there are so many things that we can do to make it better.
Reverend, I don't know if this would actually also attribute it to the culture that's around Sierra Leone, probably because we're a people who have suffered a lot of trauma. So when it comes to even keeping up with issues and the habit of asking questions, it becomes a challenge. But yes,
it's interesting. Of course, the things that you grew up with, they influence the way you behave when you are faced with a crisis situation. But in America, where we talk today about civil liberties and how things have changed, it took one woman, Rosa Parks by name, to say, no matter what happens, today I'm going to sit. I'm as qualified as any other person to sit in that bus and get a ride to where I'm going to. That's changed the history of the civil rights movement in America. They went through so many things. Slavery, the discrimination, for them to think that they were inferior, that all the other races were superior to them. But the day came when somebody said, this has to change. Until we take a stand for the right things in this country, nothing will change. Listen.
Would those stands mean protests?
We protest in different ways. Like I'm here now. I'm raising the red flag to things that are not right. And we must not hesitate, as long as we do it within the ambit of the law. That for me is the appeal I will always make to anybody. Don't try to get things changed and you take the law into your hand. No. That's not the way to do it. When we follow due processes, when it's rule of law and not rule by law, there are differences, though. But we'll leave that for another day. we follow due processes, things will change.
Yeah. Definitely. When we use Bob Marley said it takes a revolution to make a solution. We have had an armed revolution. It does not solve the solution in this country. So what we need is mental revolution.
Mental revolution.
So that's our perception should change.
Let them know that if this is wrong, it is wrong. It does not matter who is the perpetrator.
Yeah.
Is that also that will to actually have a mental revolution present within the younger generation?
That is a complex issue to deal with. When you look at a generation that is almost swept underground under the influence of drugs. We have quite a number of young people who are ambitious. They are doing well as entrepreneurs, some going to school, some in universities, but you have also a bulk of them, in quotes, the youth mandate. I feel a lot of pain because it's the potential of the nation that is being drained. The future lawyers, the future teachers, doctors, those who should come and replace the older generation when it's time for us to exit. You see them whiling away, wasting their lives, and you wonder what is going on. It's a serious concern. And let's us all collectively, especially the media, let's use this platform to begin to speak out on those issues and raise awareness for our young generation. There should not be a vacuum. When you look at the current generation, you should be hopeful that those who are coming after you, when they take over from you, they are going to make it better. But there are times when you are at a loss for words. What is going on? The kind of zest, the zeal that you expect from some young people, the ambition. I cannot say when we were growing up everything was fine. No, that's not true. But even from a very humble background, you saw people manifesting ambition. You don't want me to tell you the background of how I went through school and went to university. And so when some people come to me and say, I don't have my father or my mother, there's nobody to support me. There are times when I find it challenging to accept such justification for not doing anything. Because I know that even though things are tough, there are times if you are well positioned, you can meet the next person You can meet the other person, and they can provide you necessary support to give you a push to move in the direction of fulfilling your destiny.
Somebody, you're saying that the younger generation are becoming increasingly callous and reckless about their future.
It's so challenging. I'm not going to borrow your words, but you're not far from the truth. It's a serious challenge, and we need to think about that very seriously. Policymakers, the powers that be, parents, all of the social institutions, let's name them, the family, the land institutions, the religious institutions, the economy, those in the economy, the state, all of us should think about this crisis in our country. I don't just see it as an ordinary one-off situation. It's a serious national crisis needing the attention of everybody. Okay. That even as parents, when we wake up, we must think about what to do to ensure that our kids do not move in the wrong direction. When we send them to schools, the land institution, they too should have that at the back of their mind. The religious institutions, the state, etc. All of us should work concertedly to ensure we bail our young people out of this mess and get them to focus in that direction that will move this nation forward.
You know, we also have Victor Idris Alansana. He's the Vice Chairman, Human Rights, Sierra Leone. We've been speaking a lot on governance, on democracy, and of course the status of human rights here in Sierra Leone. I'd actually want to zoom this in on the right to be heard, the human right to be heard and seen. Of course, we have a lot of treaties to which Sierra Leone has signed, including the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which actually provides for such rights, and the Constitution as enshrined in it, the 1991 Constitution. However, in Sierra Leone, do citizens have the platform for their voices to be heard?
Well, thank you very much, UFB, for this opportunity given to the Human Rights Commission of Sierra Leone to talk to our people. You know, it is very important that we continue to hold such discussions because it gives an opportunity to have people to understand exactly what their rights are, as well as their responsibilities. And then, of course, it also gives the opportunity for us to talk to our leaders, our public servants, to understand that they have very, very strong obligations to make sure that we have a country that is fit for purpose, I mean, so to speak. The issue about the right to freedom of expression, like you've said, it's really constitutional. And it is one of the entrenched clauses which cannot be changed overnight, except it has to go through very rigorous procedures. So what we have seen over the years, as the country, we have really, there is a graduation and there is a history, you know, from one-party system. We're living from slavery, colonialism, one-party system, and then we had the incursion, the 11 years of civil war. So all of these have accumulated into a psyche where it's really difficult in many cases for Sierra Leoneans to voluntarily say things, you know, as how they see them. It's not just about the public platforms, but, you know, across the board, in our social lives, in our private homes, because of all of these things, that have accumulated over years, and the way also we interact in our schools, you know, for a very long time, corporal punishment was a mainstay in school to get kids to obey their teachers, you know. So you are groomed in a society of fear. So because of that nature, because of such a thing, it becomes ingrained in you that, oh, you just have to keep quiet and listen when people talk. When things go amiss, you just keep quiet and allow fate to address itself. So, given that background, it also suffices to say that you know, we have come of age in a way that today Sierra Leoneans, given the fact that we are now exposed to social media, for instance, Sierra Leoneans can really call their government out, you know, on different national issues through just merely having your mobile phone, whatever type of device, computer device that you have. You can write on social media. You can, make an opinion on issues around, We also have today several newspaper outlets. We have media houses, AYV and other media houses are presenting or giving the opportunity for Sierra Leoneans to be heard. So, you know, like I've said, it's clearly showing that we are coming of age as a state, as a country, where people have different platforms, people have different avenues to be able to express their frustrations, their disappointment over issues. But what we are still grappling with as a state is the physical assembly. You know, the Constitution makes provision for freedom of assembly as well. Because when you assemble, you have the opportunity to talk out, to speak out. So we are still grappling with that. And for us as a commission, we have always said that it must be given the human rights-based approach. Yes, in as much as Sierra Leoneans can now say their minds, use different platforms, they have the opportunity to come to AYV 98.1, wherever in the SLBC, they can write on social media, what have you. But that aspect of assembling as the people, or as a community or as a group, interest-based group, to be able to vent what they think really disturbs them, it's a problem that we are facing, and we have said to the police, for instance, that approach this issue with a human rights-based approach, which means that always make sure when people apply or notify you for that they have an intention, you know, to stage a peaceful demonstration or protest, whichever way you put it, you must allow them, bring them to the table, and then you agree, both parties agree on how it should go. For instance, on the timing, on the route to take, because as a matter of fact, we have how many million people in Sierra Leone, over 80 million people. Not everybody will want to be part of the rally or a demonstration or a protest. So those who are not part are also Sierra Leoneans whose rights must be protected. Children want to go to school. There are keke riders or bike riders who may want to go and fend their living. There are fishmongers. People want to open their shops. You want to come to AYB to work. You don't have interest in that particular subject matter that some colleagues or some Sierra Leonean citizens, compatriots, may have gone out to demonstrate for. So your own rights also must be protected. So we are saying that the police must ensure that bring parties together and they agree on all of these issues. It should not be like once they see or they receive a notification, but outrightly they just go ahead and say, oh no, we are disallowing because or based on national security. And the national security wouldn't even know what it actually entails. So once you continue in that trajectory, what you do, you are actually creating a pent-up anger, which means people become angry, stage by stage, and it will come a time when it will burst out. And once it bursts, it becomes a very serious challenge on us. It will have, a rippling effect, and that is what we've seen over the years. What has been happening. So we are trying to get the police to become much more professional in handling this issue because it is a constitutional issue. I also agree, yes, of course, that this constitution also creates, exceptions where such a right can be limited. Okay, it can be limited for the purpose of security, for defense, for public safety. All of these are exceptions. But then the police must make sure that those who apply, those who notify, they understand this, and that also the public generally should be able to understand. As a matter of fact, there must be a kind of modus operandi where it is clear to every citizen that this is what the police requires of you if you want to enjoy these particular rights, freedom of assembly and association. So that it becomes, all of us understand that if I want to enjoy this right, these are the things, these are the conditions precedent that I must follow. Other than just say, no, we are going to deny you because we believe that if we allow you to go out to the streets, there will be chaos, there will be violence, there will be... As a matter of fact, the police, the primary responsibility of the police is to provide security. So you have to provide security for those Sierra Leoneans who think that they want to go out and vent their anger or their disappointment or frustrations. You have to create a platform for that. You cannot deny them. So for us as a commission, we continue to get Sierra Leoneans to understand that, again, they themselves have their responsibility. If you look at the Constitution, and by the way, we have to understand as a state, the Constitution is what we call the ground norm. It is the supreme law of any state. So, Sierra Leone, ordinary citizens, as well as the duty bearers, the statesmen, or the public servants, they have responsibilities, they have obligations. So when you look at Section 5, let's start with Section 5. For the duty bearers, Section 5 of the Constitution says that the security and the welfare of the people of this country rest on the shoulders of government. And for that purpose, it defined government as the police, the military, public servants, and any other, security agency that government is so accredit. So the government has the obligation to provide, it says, the welfare of the people of this country, to make sure that they provide security. And that is where, when you say security, that is where the police comes in. Police has the obligation by the Constitution to provide security in such circumstances. Looking at it conversely, it's also, the Constitution also creates provision, Section 13, that clearly states duties of a citizen. A responsible citizen, by that section, Section 13, is the one who is nationalistic, who is patriotic, who, in fact, by the Constitution, promotes or help assist law enforcement officers to be able to maintain law and order in their different society, in their different communities. That is what the Constitution says. In fact, it even says in that same provision, in that same section, that Sierra Leoneans, parents generally, should bring up their children in the best way so that they become good citizens and not liabilities. So when you talk about drugs or drug abuse, as the case may be, it begins from the home. We have lots of broken homes in this country, a lot of broken homes, at least since the end of the war. So many kids today are really taking care of themselves. I was a teacher for a very long time, 7 years or so. I had instances where kids would come to me, they tell me their situation, they are really taking care of themselves. Girls taking care of themselves, boys taking care of themselves. There is nobody there to look after them. There is nobody there to control them. So they get, they get influenced by peer group categorization, and they get themselves into trouble, and then they become liabilities on the state. So we have a very, very serious challenge, a very serious problem, which is even over and above the politics that we see every day. So political challenges maybe really do not account for 60% of the problem we have in this country. Maybe. Because at the end of the day, politicians, they come and go. Today we have SNP in power, yesterday we had APC, next month we have another party in power. So they come and go. But the people of Sierra Leone remain, the state remains. And it means that we have to make sure, collectively as a people, we decide what kind of state do we want. Do we want a UK state kind of state, American kind of state, or Ghanaian kind of state, or do we want a Singapore in Sierra Leone? So we must decide as the state, as the country, as the people, what kind of Sierra Leone do we actually wish for? And how do we get to that state? That kind of utopian state that we want to be. Everybody in this country will cry down Sierra Leone, look at that country, look at America, look at how they are doing. But are we doing, whether you are a public servant or you are the ordinary Sierra Leonean, are we doing really what will take us to the level of Ghana, to the level of Sri Lanka or Singapore or wherever? Are we doing that? We are not. We are not at all. So at the end of the day, it is for us to now begin to understand that we have to redefine our democracy. The democracy you see in America, it has been maintained, it has been nurtured and maintained for over 200 years. The one in UK is over 100 years. Us, we are about 60 years since independence. So we have to redefine our democracy. We have a constitution, and this is very important. We call on the Sierra Leone on the government of Sierra Leone to understand that in the first place they have to fast track the review of the constitutional review process. It has taken, forever. We must come to the end of this. Number two, they must understand, all parties must understand that it is an opportunity for us as a state, as a country, and as a government to know that this is a time for us to redefine our democracy. So for instance, we are for the rest of the life of the life of the constitution, we have lived with what we call the winner takes all democracy. Once a president wins or a flag bearer wins and takes over governance, he would decide. I mean, it is his own discretion to say, I will appoint Mr. A from Party B, from my opponent. But it is not required by law. So the winner takes all means that you would actually decide who to appoint. But it is time for us to begin to understand and agree that this winner takes all has not helped us for over 30 years. We must now legislate in the constitution that a unity government may be a better way for us to go, so that the issue of nationhood, which is lacking in our country, can be really restored. If you talk about Ghana, that Ghanaians love Ghana, it doesn't matter the political differences they have, of course. America, it doesn't matter the political differences they have. But then when it comes to issues, national issues that have to do with Nigeria and Ghana or United States or UK, they all rally behind, the country. It is the country that matters. So if we begin at that stage, in the constitution, that a government who comes to power must include, it is a must, it must include, at least the main opposition party, present us a list of a number of people that should take up political offices. That will really lessen the tension. You will see every time there is transition. It has been like this forever. You will see how the place will be so chaotic. Some people will even fly for their lives. Because of what they've been doing before, and because of revenge nature. Those who come in, they say, it's our time. They will begin to do A, B, and C. We've seen all of these things. It's because the transitional process is really, really very flawed and faulty. Okay. As a matter of fact, we don't even have a transitional document, which as a commission, we are calling on government, in addition to what the constitution will actually provide, but then also there must be a transitional document, act, for instance, that will clearly state how a government or how transition is conducted, from what point to what point. Yes, I see the recommendation from the review, constitutional review process. There is a particular day that has been appointed that elections can be held, but then that is not enough. It is so scanty. There must be a dedicated legislation clearly stating or giving steps how a new government takes power, how everything must be put in place for a period, whether it's 2 months or 1 month, as the case may be. By that, you don't have to worry if you lose power. Because it happens. Government will come and go. It doesn't matter how long you've been. So all of these are issues we must consider. It's an opportunity. The constitution is still there. We have to address these issues head on as the state. And we must understand that it is only nationhood. So there's a distinction. Nationhood is one you believe that this is your country and you must protect it. It doesn't matter where you are. It doesn't matter whether you are the president or you are the cleaner, wherever you are, as a teacher, as a nurse. We have to understand that we must be patriotic, love our nation, and serve our nation. And let me conclude on this, but I will go on the issue of education. We talk about the majority of our population are young people, and about 70% of them are unemployed. But then, how have we been able to address unemployment? Have we looked at the type of education that they get? How many people, graduate with a middle-level manpower certificate or degrees? How many plumbers do we put out a year? How many mechanics do we put out a year? How many nurses do we put out a year? But go to Fobe College. I was there for 8 years, by the way. You will see a dozen, I'm saying a dozen, you see thousands, with all due respect, of those other areas, humanity areas that, you have to really spend another 4 years finding a job. 4 years that you did at the university, getting your degree. You have to also spend that 4 years or more for you to have a job. So it is also the type of education that you have is causing the problem. Because education should be able to make you become a self-employed person, rather than relying on the state. In Sierra Leone, most of people who go to universities, when they come, they rely on the states to really give them jobs. In other countries, it is the private sector, that actually creates job opportunities. The state will only create a new environment. And by creating an environment, you have to start with the type of education. That is where you should start, so that at the end of the day, when your kids come out, when people graduate from universities, from colleges, from, what have you, they should be able to employ themselves. They should be able to, there should be a readily made job, for them. A lot of Sierra Leoneans leave Sierra Leone, for instance. They have some form of education. They go to overseas. They become maids. They become maids. They become how do you call it? Cleaners, or as the case may be. They have some form of education. Some of them even have degrees, okay? But then they prefer to stay in UK, in America, to do such menial jobs, or in the Middle East. All of them. So it tells you that we have not created an environment for our people to thrive. And right. We have said this over and again. We have to redefine our democracy and agree. So I'll end with this. We have to at least call what I refer to as a national development and democracy conference, where as a people from all walks of life agree on the development trajectory that we want to take and the type of democracy we actually adopt going forward. That is the only way we can actually forge ahead. Otherwise, we'll still come here 10 years after, new parties in power. We still have these discussions. 15 years after, 20 years after, we'll still have these discussions if we don't take the radical steps. Both as the government and as the ordinary people, we'll still have the same discussions, mark you. So we have to be bold enough to change the way we think, to change the way we do things, and to, understand that the 21st century is an industrial revolution. We must have a type of education that readily sets you for the market, for the job market, before you get your paper. And that is our strongest recommendation to make.
Right, we want to thank you very much indeed. A lot of ideas, recommendations from the Vice Chair of the Human Rights Commission, Sierra Leone. From what is clear this morning, indeed, from the point all of you have advanced, is that there is a national hemorrhage, a deficiency of sorts that has eaten across all fabrics, be it education, politics, behavior, from the homes, parents, all of the agents of socialization where education starts, particularly from the home. There's a big problem, and we'll come to that briefly before we round off. But another thing I've observed, of late, is that yes, there have been some gains. When the SDP-led government came, they have repealed the 1965 Public Order Act Part 5. Now that law not only speaks to journalists, it talks. It's a blanket law for everyone in the country. Now they've tried, they've done well. It has been repealed, and now there is a Cybercrime Act. Now, what we've been seeing of late is that there's been this meticulous, targeting of or attack against free speech in Sierra Leone, where people cannot voice, dissenting opinions from what is coming from the, the quarters of powers in the country. You understand, i.e., the ruling party. You understand, you just have to align with the ruling party or nothing. No dissenting voice whatsoever. I talked to you, Alphonso. How do you think? Do you think it's a deliberate attempt to stifle free speech? Yes, repealed Part 5 of the Public Order Act, but there is this new law, this new man in the block, which is very violent, perhaps even more than the previous.
Well, I would say probably it's a calculated attempt to silence the voices of citizens, and I will tend to bring connection so that we understand the angle where I'm coming from. Traditional laws are largely unwritten, and in Sierra Leone, the issue of peaceful protest, the one Vice Chair has just addressed, has become a traditional law. It's a traditional law now. It's a custom now, even though it's not written, but it has become generally accepted for each government that is in power. When you don't need, if I'm going to apply, I'm notifying to the police that I'm going to protest in favor of the ruling SLPP party, they will never ask me as to security issues. I just have to go. But if I'm notifying them that I'm protesting on issues that is against the interest of the ruling party, it becomes a national security. It has now become a pattern, it has now become a law. So it has been commonly accepted by the police for the states, because they are working for the states. And so because of that, they have now translated that particular approach into what we are now discussing, the issue of freedom of speech. It's, if you are writing in favor of let's say, praising the government, no qualms, go ahead. There is no security threat. But if you are presenting legitimate issue of concern that is not within the interests of the governance, then you are creating what we refer to as insecurity or incitement. And that is what they will always tell you. And that when you incite, when you speak the truth to power, they say the incitement. When they speak truth to you, they say it is justice.
Reverend, we've heard from Alphonso. But again, another thing that I would like to bring to the fore here this morning is the manner in which people criticize these days. To some extent, it's becoming abuses rained on leaders of the country. We've seen instances where it appears as though people are not able to draw the line between what is a clear abuse, and rudeness generally, and constructive criticism. You understand? People using all sort of motherly invectives on their leaders. You understand? Where do we draw the line, or how can someone be able to criticize, respectfully with decency, but still be able to make the point and not insult a leader?
Very interesting. But there is a metaphor you employed before you brought Gbanie in about the national hemorrhage, a picture of a nation that is bleeding. And we know when you have that kind of situation, if it is not addressed, it might lead to even coma or death. Because when you lose the lifeblood, you waste away, and in no time you are gone. And that is a picture that will hardly leave my mind. And about our nation, meaning that medical attention, again, I speak in metaphorical terms, medical attention is required to stop the bleeding and get the nation to heal. These are all symptoms of a nation that is hemorrhaging, or a nation that is bleeding, where those who have the power, they can be arbitrary, and those who are citizens who are supposed to obey the law, they can become lawless. Those two extremes are never accepted in a civilized society. If we are to succeed as a nation, everybody must move away. It's a kind of continuum. So there is a middle ground where those who are lawless should move towards being law-abiding, and those who are arbitrary should move towards upholding the law as it is, ensuring that there is fair play for everybody. Now what we see is everybody reacting to the other person. This person is extreme, that other person is extreme, so we will always get this chaotic situation. Opposition does not mean insulting the other person. Again, when we come back to our culture, that is even, it's an anathema in our culture to use motherly invectives to address your concerns. No. We don't allow that. When we are growing up, you'll be given the beating of your life when you decide, it's your mother that will beat you up. When you decide to just open your mouth and begin to throw invectives at people. In fact, it's worse when you now use motherly invectives. You know that day you're not going to sleep well in that house. But today it's almost like we've sanctioned it. And social media should not be the platform for that. Other people are using social media to create content and they are making money. But what do we use social media for? It is to create such problems. We sit somewhere and we're insulting everybody. At the same time, of course, we should continue to appeal to the powers that be, who are doing things out of the way to say, do the right thing. But again, those who are responding to what they are doing, we have ways and means to get it done that is within the law. even though, of course, it's just been acknowledged that there is a challenge to free speech. And that again is a serious problem. When the means by which people can legally come up and say, I don't, this is not right, there is a challenge in that particular area. People use other means. And of course, it is by no means a way of justifying that action. I condemn it outrightly, and I use this platform to appeal to all of the players, those who have interest in this national conversation. Change your approach and ensure that your message that you're saying out to the public should be one that would address the issue and not insult anybody in any way. Not forgetting that it's not just adult viewers who are attached to social media. There are also children who have access to this. So if we are raising our children in that atmosphere where we tell them it is right to insult anybody or do whatever, it is right to become aggressive, then we are not doing the right thing. It will come back on us in due course, because there was something somebody said, I think it's Commissioner, that whatever we allow to well up, there comes a time when it will just explode. We have to avoid all of that and ensure that everything is on the table. How I feel, how you feel, what is right, what is not right, all of it should be on the table, and we should be prepared to address those issues. And there was something I needed to say before I let go. But let me put it this way. Everybody, wherever you find yourself, you have a responsibility to the state. Whether you are among the governors or the governed, everybody has a responsibility to the state. The state was established for a reason, and that reason should not be set aside for anything that is untoward. That should be the focus. We should keep our eyes on that, to say we've come together on the basis of a social contract. And that is why we have all of these state, institutions, machineries of states, even the Constitution, to show that we have an agreement, the governors and the governed, that on this basis, this is what we give, and this is what you also provide. And it's always a middle-of-the-road policy that will get us to where all of us should go. Okay. And lawlessness and arbitrariness cannot help us in terms of consolidating our democracy.
All right, we do have some messages from our Facebook page which we would like to read through to add the voices of viewers to the conversation. Swissman is saying there's no democracy in Africa and there's no democracy in Sierra Leone. We're not blaming SLPP alone when we're talking about democracy and the right on free speech. We address both APC and SLPP. These political parties are abusing our democracy, and they're also abusing the rights of the people who they're supposed to protect as good leaders.
Swissman is saying, yes, indeed, the country's democracy is going normal with massive hunger, homelessness and unlawful detention in the country. Now the people have chose to remain silent because when they speak or demonstrate, they are going to be chased by the police. I know that this is what the politicians like. Some politicians like when they praise them, even when they are not performing their moral duties. If we can reflect our minds in the reaction of the Speaker of Parliament, Mrs. Melvin Tijan Mansouri and Kamarimba, we will not sit and praise the country's democracy as perfect. For me, our democracy is not correct because the people are deprived of their basic costs of living, and they are also deprived of their democratic rights. The politicians need to change their political attitude if we want to have a perfect democracy.
And Mystic Dwazak says, good to hear from your studio guest. He's referring to Vice Chair. He's one of the public servants I love most as a result of his objectivity. Just that our human rights system in Sierra Leone is still fragile as a result of some human rights abuses in the country. And lastly, on my side, Swissman says again, if I see democracy, I would tell it that the people of Sierra Leone are looking for it. That's just an icebreaker.
This one, my very last, is host friend Kamara is saying democracy is the $1,000 machine. the $100 machine, are all those troubled on the democratic nations that spend very little on government as the nations suffer chronic poverty. Democracy is kind of expensive if priorities are ignored. Basic and needful approach. Just your final comments. I'll start with Alphonso.
Yeah, and I think we encourage that gentleman that said if he sees democracy, we tell him, please make sure that you tell democracy that we want to see him. We are waiting for him. Anyway, quickly, I just have two of the issues. The one that said no democracy in Africa, I think that could be a misleading statement. There are some countries in Africa that really practice the ideas of democracy. And let's just say for Sierra Leone, we still have challenges in our democratic process, even though there are some strides that we have taken, but we still have challenges. On the issue of deprive of democratic rights, yes, we know that's the greatest challenge we have. It's not only the issue of voting, where people have they go to vote, they elect their governance, but how do we contribute, how do we participate in governance, how do we access justice, how do we protest? And it is clear that the issue of protest and the issue of the constitution could also help us to enjoy our democratic rights. And we use this medium to encourage the ruling party, the SLPP-led government, and the opposition party, the APC-led opposition member in parliament, party in parliament, that the constitution is not for political parties. Today, SLPP is in government. Tomorrow, they will leave power. And when they leave power, how do they want this constitution to protect them? It is not when they are in power, they are looking for ways how to make sure that they present a constitution. But the constitution is for you at the time when you need it and when you don't have the power to protect yourself.
Reverend?
Very interesting responses from our audience. Somebody was even being sarcastic. And, well, it's the beauty of a nation where we are striving to practice democracy. But let's do our best to ensure that we address the issues that we are faced with every seriousness. We call out on the things that are not right, and we make it clear to all of us, without a partisan lens of bias, to say it's about Sierra Leone. And there are times when the challenge is because of the level of our civic culture. Somebody, one of the philosophers made a statement which is interesting, that until rulers or kings are philosophers, or at least they have knowledge of philosophies, cities won't have rest. And what he was actually saying was, until we know what it means, how to govern, there are always going to be challenges all over the place. And we must remind each other that the things that we talk about, they are recognized by the nation's constitution, and we must ensure they are upheld so that it becomes a win-win situation for everybody. You, who is part of the governors, you were there to actually seek the interests of the people. And you, the people, they govern, you are supposed to work in concert with them to ensure we realize the goal of the state, whether it's the economic objective of the state, the political, social, etc. All of us must work together. Again, even as it is work in progress, it has to be the collective and concerted efforts of every Sierra Leonean that will change this situation. Let's stop complaining in our little corners. Let's come to the market square and let everybody understand what the problem is, and we look for common sense solutions that will ensure we address them. At the end of the day, it is a Sierra Leonean who benefits when things go well. And it's also a Sierra Leonean who becomes a victim when things don't go well. So let's ensure that we move away from our extremes and get to that place where everything can work for all of us as a nation.
Vice Chair?
Yes, thank you very much. A lot of interesting comment there. I appreciate the text that in a way try to applaud me or the commission. Well, this is what we do actually. But then when he talked about there is human rights violations or abuse, everywhere. So we have to be clear on this. It is called human rights, so it is coming from human. As far as there is human existence, you will always expect that there will be human rights violations, there will be human rights abuses, and there is no state, there is no country in the world that is free of human rights violations and human rights abuses. But what is really important is that when that happens, there is a place where you can go and seek redress mechanism, so that they are able to address those issues. And we almost understand that it is a concerted effort to make sure that we have a country that is human rights friendly, a country where the ideals of human rights, the tenets of human rights are imbibed in us, and it guides our activities, our relationship with others. And somebody talked about there is no democracy in Sierra Leone. No, there is. Is there a democracy in America? In America, they go to vote, they go to elections. At the end of the day, the person that emerges, the president, may not necessarily be the one that the majority voted for in an election. So that is their own form of democracy. Is there democracy in the UK? In the UK, it is the majority party in power, that at the end of the day becomes the prime minister. Would you say there is democracy in China? When last did we hear of an election in China? So we have to, like I've said, we have to redefine our democracy. Let it reflect on our traditional history in governance or in leadership issues, so that at the end of the day, it's something that we'll be able to actually work with. But as a part in short, I will reiterate the fact that in Sierra Leone, we have actually accepted the fact that, it's not my business. Things can go amiss, things can go bad. It's not my own business. But I have said several times, one, for those who are in power, you safeguard yourself today when you're in power, when you have the opportunity, because the laws you make today will actually protect you when you're out of power. And for those who, intend to come to power to take over, you have to be able to understand that democracy, rule of law, good governance, is not just about the party in power. You also have a contributing factor. You cannot fuel violence, you cannot fuel riots, so that you find a way to come to power. At the end of the day, when you come, you meet destruction, you have to find time to be able to address all of those issues. By the time you get to real work, you don't have enough time. And to citizens, we have to understand that the Constitution places duties on us to understand, for us to be patriotic, to be nationalistic, and to make sure that at all times we respect the rights of other people, because that is where it starts. Where your rights begins, it is where the next man's rights start. So we have to understand that this is a concerted effort that all of us must come together to make this country, to develop this country. This country has cried for too long. For far long, we have cried as a state, but then we still have not, as the people, decided the way to go. And we have to decide. We have to make that decision very deliberately, so that we have a Sierra Leone that is really, really fit for purpose. That is, it doesn't matter whether Trump gets up one morning and say, all Africans will be deported tomorrow morning. You don't have to cry. You have a country to come to where you know that your rights will be respected. You know that there are opportunities that are bound that you can really fight for, and at the end of the day, make yourself a better life and your families. So It's very important that we make our country so that it will be one that everybody will be able to enjoy.
All right. Here's Victor Idris Alansana, Vice Chairman, Human Rights Commission of Sierra Leone, and earlier as well we've been speaking with Reverend Jibril Akabo, Director of Communications at NCD, and Alphonso Gbanie, Executive Secretary for Human Rights Defenders Network Sierra Leone. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for lending us your voices on this all-important topic and conversation this morning.